This is your Daily Mojo Extra.
First of all, for people who may not have ever seen you or any of these theories, who are you and how did you get mired in all this stuff?
Yeah, great question. So my name's Ashton Forbes. I'm a government contractor. I am not a disinformation agent or anything like that. I'm definitely not an agent of the government in any way. I have already disclosed that I have a security clearance. That security clearance is related to my contract job, which is nothing to do with orbs or advanced technology or UFOs, if you want to think they're that, or anything related to this. I got involved because this was a community-led investigation. And this investigation began in early August so this year. So it's only been 3 months that we've come this far, which is hard to think about. But these videos had reemerged after being around for 9 years, dating back to just weeks after the event. Part of the reason why I got so interested is I remember seeing one of these videos back in 2012, long before I ever thought anything like this could be real. And I had become interested in the, they call, I guess, UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. They renamed, they rebranded UFOs into something a little more palatable. And I became interested in that in 2017 when I saw the DoD Navy videos get declassified. And I thought, oh, wow, there's something going on here. I had never seen any videos that would compel me to do an investigation of this sort ever in my life until I saw these videos on the UFO subreddit. There was tons of discussion about them. I began to take those people's work, source them, give them credit for their work, and repost that work on Twitter to get it more exposure. I think the part where I started to become activist is when I realized that a user named Tacky NG was able to piece together other people's work and realize that we were looking at the satellite video at a Citrix session that was logged into the actual database that presumably they use this spy satellite database, like a Google Earth video playback. It's called SBIRS, Space-Based Infrared System.
Well, let me ask you that. So you weren't into UFOs or any of that stuff prior to jumping into this?
No, I was never part of any communities or anything like that. I mean, I would look at videos and stuff that people would post, and some more compelling than others. I started to get a feeling like there was something more out there. This stuff could be true. Right. And I've always been very interested in science and astrology. Curiosity rover, when we sent that to Mars, I was following that all the time because I just wanted to see, like, what's this all about? What are we going to find on this planet, right? Yeah. And so, that's really what kind of engaged me. But I just never thought that there was really hard evidence of these UFOs being real until those DoD Navy videos were declassified. And that's when I realized, okay, there's something here. I don't know exactly what we're looking at, but there's something floating without any type of visible propulsion. And since then, there's been a number of other, I think, credible incidents that have happened. I mean, the one most recently is those February shootdowns that just seemed very suspicious in Alaska. Yeah. Where, like, we have video of this balloon, this spy balloon being shot down, literally it's video of it. But then these three other objects, they won't show us anything about them. They have the North American, I think it was NATO commander comes on and says, we're not calling it a balloon. We don't know how it was being propelled. He says that in a press conference on national television. And then after that, they start, like, trying to retract it and try to, like, change the statement, claim they never found it. They never found any of these things, but they claim that Quantico is also, like, they've got the parts and Quantico's looking into it. So they issue all these contradictory statements. And then I think that when I saw these videos, that just goes away, right? That's how the disinformation works, right? Is then we just never talk about it again. Yeah. So when I saw these videos, I started to piece together everything that we had learned in the last 10 years, which is we had seen this FLIR forward-looking infrared, which appears to be a version of what we're looking at on this MQ-1C Gray Eagle drone video. Except for it's a version that's had the HUD data removed, and it's been colorized using the software on board this multispectral camera that we believe Raytheon produces. We're looking at this one, right? And so we start to realize, like, wow, this actually could be a real video here. Like, this looks like what we would expect a drone video to look like. Plus, from the public perspective, no one knew that this is like what these cameras looked like. Those videos were not declassified in 2017, 3 years after the events of MH370. You can even see the nose right there on this drone. This is an MQ-1C Gray Eagle. You can find pictures in Google Images where this particular drone has cameras mounted on the wings, just in the same locations that we see there. I mean, the first question is like, how would someone even fake this? Like, how would they have known in 2014 what this stuff would look like?
Because it even goes through the. I've watched enough of your interviews and video to know that's not exhaust, right? Is that smoke from the plane, or do we know what that is?
It's still speculative, but I think smoke is the most likely answer because we have a witness who is down underneath the plane right within minutes of this happening, who says she sees dark smoke, and it's in the middle of the night. The plane is glowing orange, consistent with battling the lithium ion battery fire. People have speculated other options. Contrails is too low for contrails. We see cumulus clouds in the background, so it can't be contrails. They only form at high altitudes. Exhaust is something that has been proposed several times, but my understanding of exhaust is it would dissipate a lot faster than what we're seeing in the videos there.
Right.
And people thought, well, maybe they're dumping the fuel, which is, I think, a good thought because this looks like it's doing an emergency landing over the ocean. But the problem is the fuel would be affected by gravity. And somebody else actually just like an hour ago was saying another reason why it couldn't be fuel that I can't remember off the top of my head. I think they said it wouldn't show up in IR that way. Well, it would be cold in the IR. But
and also if that drone is flying through it, you would think that if it was fuel, which would be a solid, it would spatter all over the lens, right?
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I think we can pretty much rule out it being fuel. I mean, I think there's a tiny possibility it's somehow exhaust, but realistically, given that we have an eyewitness that saw this dark smoke, it's pretty much has to be smoke. And then it's just a matter of like, okay, where's the smoke coming out of the plane? Which there's several possibilities. Could somehow be coming out of the engines. It could be coming out of the heat exhaust ports that are right underneath the landing gear. There's one on each side. The plane could also have holes in it. Could be depressurized. We speculated based on the explosion of these lithium ion batteries that we think is what made the plane go dark. So there's several possibilities. Ultimately, I'm not sure how important it is. We know exactly where on the plane the smoke is coming out of, more so that we can see it and we have an eyewitness. Yeah,
and the reason that I feel like it's important is that this video matches up so well with the other video the satellite video. I mean,
we believe this is a SBIR system, space-based infrared system. So. And you can see these coordinates in the bottom left, and that also helps us to understand what this is that this is like a Google Earth video playback for the military.
Right.
And they can play it back anywhere. And that explains why we don't see atmospheric interference. It explains why we don't see the movement of the satellites when we're watching this.
Right.
Because what we're really seeing is a playback. And that's useful because if you're building a battlefield awareness map, you can't be having these satellites flying over. Like you need it to be a stationary view, right? And that's why you have the coordinates, is that you move the coordinates around, it moves your view around, just like if you were on Google Earth and watching it.
Well,
and that lets you...
these are two different independent pieces of video. That's the other thing, that it's not like we just have the infrared or we just have the satellite imagery. It's two different pieces of video from two completely different vantage points that match perfectly.
That's what got me excited right away, because I remember seeing that colorized thermal from the drone back in 2014, and I just dismissed it, just thinking it had to be fake or something. And this was well before my consciousness had risen to a point where I could understand that these things could be real, where, even from a scientific perspective, right now we're still just on the cutting edge of understanding quantum mechanics and how it unifies with the macroscopic world, general relativity.
Right.
And that's what this will all boil down to for the academics that are out there. Is there a unifying theory of quantum and macro that brings everything together? But without that, once you see that, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say and I'm sorry, I have so many questions that I'd say, and it's stuff. It really does. I've watched last night we were watching the Hard Truths podcast with Dave Rossi. Is that right? Yep. And just when you guys got going, there were so many big words. I had to stop and pause, and Beth was here. She's like, well, she said, what does that mean? I said, I don't really know. I used to think I was a smart person, and then I realized, no, I just tested well all those years ago. Now I'm like, okay, I think I kind of understand. The quantum mechanics is fascinating. The double slit thing, that's how I think that a lot of people are familiar with the double slit experiment by now, that things are affected by being watched and whatever. But that's where the quantum world is, where all of this stuff kind of meshes together, right? I mean, that's why this would make sense, the little orbs flying around the plane and all.
Yeah. And when I saw that second video after seeing the first one, I'm like, oh, wow. And I only seen that satellite one 3 months ago. I'd never seen that one before. And I'm like, whoa, these are perfect sync with one another. I mean, how many UFO videos or whatever out there where you have two different angles of the same exact event in perfect synchronization, right?
Right.
I probably can count on one hand or less. So, you know, that's also when I got excited about it. But when we were able to prove this is a Citrix session where you can actually just see the mouse come on the screen,
right?
The reason why I got excited there was that you can tell from this video that this is not a camera recording this. It's not somebody with their cell phone recording it, right? Like you would see in some videos. They're actually just cropping the screen using a screen recording.
Right.
And the reason why it's scrunched is because we're seeing this side by side. It's actually stereoscopic, meaning this is not duplicated on either side. There's slightly different angles that's happening here.
So it's two
if this
satellites.
Is coming from, yeah, theoretically, it's if this is truly stereoscopic footage and this is the original version, then this is coming from two different satellites, which we actually were able to find. There is satellite pairs in outer space, but one was sitting right above the locations of the coordinates there at 1840.
How'd you find that?
It's like, so we had satellite experts that were volunteers that were working with us that they found out that there are trajectories out there. So if people play games like Kerbal Space Program, people that are really interested in like how gravity works, and that's a game where it's like it accurately reflects how space would work if you're having something propel through it.
Right.
Some of these experts found, I can't remember the exact name of the website, like Planet 365 or something is the name of the website. They have trajectories for every single satellite out there because amateurs are looking up and they can see the satellites. So they map them and they have they call them the 2-week trajectories. So satellites can't move around. They're stuck in their trajectory essentially because they're at a certain height or a certain altitude. So in order for them not to fall to Earth, they have to be kind of stuck in that spot. We did check before and after to make sure that this satellite pair, USA 229, hadn't moved or anything like that, just in case they had the ability to, somehow move it, operationalize it using some sort of advanced capability, but it did not. And so our satellite experts were looking through every satellite out there, like all of them, like there's over 100, even the Chinese ones, even the Russian ones. And at the same time, I was looking at this and working with other people as well, the community, and we were realizing that, oh, well, this is the right payload. Like if there is a pair of satellites and it's stereoscopic, we can really narrow it down. So I started looking at the NOS, Naval Ocean Surveillance Satellites. And around the same time the satellite experts were narrowing down to USA 229, I'm looking at the list on Wikipedia, and I find this Trump picture that he posted in 2019. And this Trump picture is from USA 224, which was sent up in 2011.
Right.
And it looks like it has similar optical view capability as ours. So I thought, I bet ours is somewhere around that period, plus or minus 10 years. Turns out in the Naval Ocean Surveillance Satellites, they got upgraded in the early 2000s from second generation to third generation. And now they're only come in pairs. And their second one's officially classified as debris. Yeah, this picture right here. Ours looks very similar to this, except for the fact that we don't have any shadows in ours. There's shadows all over this one.
Right.
And so this is another clue that we're taking something at night. This one here is taking a day, clearly.
Okay.
But
all right.
And somebody was able to reverse engineer this, figure out what time this was taken, and the exact satellite USA 224 was the one that was sending the data for this. We presume that this is actually using the Cyber system too, because experts couldn't believe this was real because they thought there should be more atmospheric interference. But once you realize that this is coming from a Google video playback and they just take a snapshot of it, then you realize what the real capabilities are, is that they're using a computer program that's beaming the data from space, from all the satellites in real time, all the time.
Right.
And it's generating this real-time video playback where they can also record it, right, and look back anywhere they want, anytime they want. So around the same time, I end up narrowing it down. There's only like 2 possible satellites that were sent up around that time, like 2011, 2012.
Right.
The other one was USA 238, and it was not in the right location at all. I was thinking this was in the South Indian Ocean because I believed all the official narratives early on. I was actually never really like huge into conspiracy theories or anything like that. Right. And so we were thinking, it has to be South Indian Ocean. The problem is it's there like way too early, like 18:15 UTC. The plane's not supposed to be there for like 4 or 5 hours later. So we're sitting here thinking like, did this plane teleport twice? Like we had no idea. And then we just figure out like, oh no, the coordinates don't have a minus sign. We don't have to overthink this. There's no minus sign. It's just the Nicobar Islands. And then the satellite just keeps moving up. 30 minutes later, it's right there in the right location in the Nicobar Islands, the same exact satellite. That's when I start getting like, whoa, this is it. This is what's happening.
Well, and the time thing that you brought up, because like you, I'm kind of naive in a lot of ways, because when I hear a story and I hear that, oh, well, the pilot did this and then they were going to fly this way for 30, I just go, oh, okay, they were. I don't ever stop initially and say, yeah, but what if he didn't? What if he flew left instead of right? I just go, all right, he flew right. So then how do we, wait a minute, maybe he didn't fly right. Takes me a while. So initially when they said the plane lost contact, it was a different time than what was truly the time that the plane lost contact, correct?
Early on, there was so much obfuscation in the news, and I remember following the plane like in the days after it disappeared. No one could tell what really was going on. No one really knew exactly where this plane had gone. They didn't reveal this idea that the plane turned over Malaysia for several days, even though they had military radar that showed it happening. So they had everybody thinking it was in the South the South China Sea, which is over to the east.
Right.
When they knew that this plane went over to the Nicobar Islands, and they didn't say anything about it. And they knew it flew over Penang. Like if you were to look at the flight path that we have now, that is really based on all the available evidence, and you had presented that on day one, people would definitely believe what we're presenting right now. So the first issue is there's really two events. The plane goes dark over the South China Sea, but it doesn't crash over there. It just goes dark, and then it turns around because of this lithium ion battery fire. It's witnessed by Mike McKay on an oil rig, who sees the plane on fire for about 10 seconds, far in the distance, just over the horizon. And then the plane turns around. Plane goes to Penang, which is the correct location to go to. Yeah, right. That's a great one right there. So they're thinking that, oh, it must be over here. And so for like 9 days, they're searching in the South China Sea. And then they only start to search in the Nicobar Islands region over here to the west, like 5 days later, 4 days later, like that.
Right.
Which they knew that the plane went over there. So it's super weird that they don't look at this at all. The initial reports from the next day say they lost contact at 1840 UTC, the exact time where we think our videos happen, where our satellite is staring down over the Nicobar Islands, just a little bit to the west of your mouse, but like near those little islands over there. This is also the location where the official narrative says this plane turned into the South Indian Ocean. So it's quite a coincidence that this is also the exact location where they say, oh, this plane went to the South Indian Ocean. Nothing about this flight path here indicates suicidal intent. You are just going to crash the plane, right? If you are suicidal, you're not going to go to the nearest airport to try to land the plane. Like that doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
But people fall for it, and they came up with all these, like they tried to vilify the pilot with fake stories about how he might be depressed, how he was breaking up with his wife and stuff. Like everybody's stuck up for him. Everybody has. And none of this stuff makes sense from, like, oh, they also try to claim he's trying to say goodbye to his hometown. They claim that Penang is his hometown and he's going to say goodbye to it at 2 a.m. in the pitch black when it's the closest airport to land the plane.
And he had the flight simulator at his house, right?
Yeah, and then they try to claim like, oh, well, he had a flight simulator, therefore he's practicing his suicide route. The route MH370 to Jeddah is the same relative path if you were going from Kuala Lumpur. But it's not anything close to what we're talking about, going to the South China Sea and then cutting back over Penang. They just try to use like the tiny part from Kuala Lumpur up towards the Nicobar Islands to claim that that's what he was practicing. That makes no sense either. And then they say, oh, well, they have one plot point that they found in his computer that is like in the South Indian Ocean. Therefore, this is a practice route. I'm not even sure that that's valid, to be honest with you. But if it is, he probably was just practicing his route to Jeddah, which is MH370, which he was actually slated to fly the next day after that. The dates on those points that they found, it was like February 2nd or February 3rd that he was practicing it. The flight was February 4th. It's like, okay, so it was not a suicide route planning thing at all. That's been completely debunked, even by the independent group. Victor's blog is where I found that information. And I think just a lot of people don't dig into the facts, and they listen to these narratives of whatever the TV tells them, which is just false.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. There's so much information that just keeps getting spewed, and the as you know, the interwebs are an endless supply of pretty much you can justify or reinforce. Doesn't matter what you think, you can find articles that will reinforce your thought process and your belief system and all of that. So, I mean, it's all out there in the entire spectrum. So it's hard to know what really is the truth. And when you see, like with the plane turning around there, why do we even know why the plane turned around?
Oh, yeah, because that's going to the closest airport. I mean, you're in an emergency situation. So that's exactly what you should do. So if you read the Wired article, if you just Google Wired MH370, that person speculates that there was an electrical fire. They were really close. It was lithium ion batteries. I mean, they have 500 pounds of these energetic lithium ion batteries in the plane, which get outlawed by the FAA in the next year in passenger planes because of how dangerous they are in the cargo bays.
Right.
So, and that event explains everything. Electrical fire doesn't, because it's too hard for the electrical fire to make the whole plane go dark at once. But if you have an explosion happen and you've got this very energetic event where these batteries can't get put out, you know, that explains our scenario. And it even says that's the correct location to go to, because I kept wondering why not go back to Kuala Lumpur. But it's due to the elevation and due to that airport being slightly closer.
All right.
So that's really the explanation behind that.
Fire. He goes, all right, we have a fire. We better go land. And at this point, has the communication been... See, now on this particular...
I want to talk about that.
On this particular map, it says that it deviated, I guess, at 119, 120.
So 119 is when we have the official communication that was released. I think they hid other communications after this, because at 119 is when the pilot very calmly says, "Good night, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370." And it might even be the co-pilot that says that. It's unclear. The plane goes dark 64 seconds later, which is presumably the lithium ion batteries igniting, having an explosion, and then the pilot's pulling the bus so that they can check which circuit has been damaged. And now that's the reason why the plane goes dark. It doesn't really explain why you wouldn't have communication. At 1:30 a.m., which is 17:30 UTC, another 777 pilot who's going to Tokyo hears the plane, hears the pilot and co-pilot over the radio. Doesn't want to say his name. So there is another communication we know for sure at 1:30. This is actually even mentioned in the press conferences that they didn't lose full contact till 1:30 a.m. So a lot of time they just keep contradicting themselves. The Malaysian Minister of Defense, in an interview 7 weeks later, completely contradicts the official story. Says that he gets questioned on why they didn't send jets up. Says the plane was unidentified on military radar, but says they knew it was a civilian airliner and they knew it wasn't hostile. How is that possible without communication, especially if hijacking is one of the main suspected causes? The only way is that they would have had to have communication. The only reason why you don't set a jet up is because you have communication. Otherwise, why are you not sending a jet to follow it, to potentially shoot it down if it's going to go try to crash into a building, right? I mean, this is a post 9/11 world we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So she asks him, the interviewer does, and he says, well, why would we send it up there? Are we going to shoot it down? Like, you would judge me if you shot it down. She's like, no, you would send it up there to follow the plane, right? Like, what?
See where it's going.
The only reason why I can come up with is the U.S. government took over. They said, we got this. You keep your planes on the ground. We'll take care of this. And what we see in the videos is the only reason that makes sense to me on why you're covering this up. If this is just a lithium ion battery fire, you just, you can let it crash. It's a mundane event. A lot of these planes burnt up actually before 2014 because of these same reasons.
Of carrying batteries?
Yeah, most of them were cargo, but if you go look them up, there were several incidents where a lot of people died from these. Even trying to battle them, they billow this toxic smoke. And so even when you try to battle them, it's dangerous.
They're like the vapes that we've seen blow up in people's pockets and looks like a nuclear explosion in their pocket. Same kind of thing.
I didn't even know how dangerous these were. Like, I had seen those videos as well, right? And I knew that, okay, they can explode, the phones can, and a lot of times it has to do with them either being charged incorrectly. There's some with scooters. There's a NASA one out there, and you can see this fire comes up, it explodes, smokes everywhere. People put it out, and then like a minute later, it's back up again because it's called a runaway lithium-ion battery fire. Now, realize that's just one tiny battery. This plane had 500 pounds of these batteries, and they were just stacked up on in cardboard boxes on top of each other. This would have been a huge energetic event that would not have been able to be put out.
And these were were they manufactured in Malaysia? What they were? So
the official ATSB report says they were put together and they packaged them or whatever. They were actually built by Motorola, but they were put together that day, March 7th, and they missed 2 security screenings. So keep in mind, this is the time before we realized how dangerous these things were. Nowadays, you go to the post office, they ask you if you get on an airplane and you try to check a bag, they ask you, do you have any lithium-ion batteries in there? We take it extremely seriously now. Back then, we didn't really realize how dangerous they were. And if you go look at the FAA's website on lithium-ion battery fires, you'll see in 2014 there's just a couple. I bet you there was more. We just weren't reporting them, right? Sure, and then you see them exponentially, not exponentially, but linearly increase. This year alone, there's already been over 65, and this is after we've outlawed them in cargo bays. So these are ones that are happening in the passenger areas. Last year, I think it was like 75 or so. Like, these are happening more than once a week. That's how dangerous these things are.
500 pounds of these things, 500 kilograms, right?
You might as well just have bombs on your plane, in my opinion. I mean, the only difference is the bombs would take the plane down right away. These lithium-ion battery explosions are going to do damage to the plane, but they're not going to take it out right away.
And on the cargo thing, I remember at the time or sometime afterward, there was some sort of discussion about the mangosteens, the fruit, being on board. Was that a red herring? I mean, because they aren't in season at that time, I guess, in Malaysia. So people are like, wait a minute, it's not mangosteens. It's, I don't know, gold.
Yeah, and Florence Changi did the most research on this. I've talked to her personally. Her opinion is that it might be other contraband cargo, like rhino horns or ivory or something, right? But that, but one thing that's been interesting is we've wondered if there could have been a reaction from the mangosteens generating some kind of, I'm probably not going to say the right thing here, but some type of reaction from the mangosteens, like having water kind of come from them, condensation or condensation. Sorry, that's not the right word. But you get what I'm saying. Condensation. And so if there's some condensation happening on them if they're close to these batteries, you could have this water causing this interaction. They actually looked into this officially, and they ruled it out, but I don't know if you can believe much from the official report when it comes to how ruling out the fire situation, honestly. Like, there's 19 witnesses that corroborate a fire scenario. Mike McKay, 9 people along the coast that hear loud noises the same time Mike McKay sees the fire. 8 fishermen on a boat. At the same time we get that communication at 17:30, they're on a boat there and they see the plane flying low. That is not consistent with the pilot trying to take everybody out. It's consistent with the pilot trying to get everyone oxygen. So right there in the South China Sea to the northeast on the blue line, after it turns around.
Oh, right. Okay.
So right after it turns around, 10 minutes later, there are 8 fishermen on a boat, and they see the plane flying unusually low. This would be consistent with that depressurization event happening from the explosion.
Right.
But him not the pilot trying to take people out. He's trying to fly low enough that they have enough oxygen to be able to breathe. They have to fly under 10,000 feet. There's also rumors, but I can't find any official reports, that people on the actual peninsula saw the plane flying low as well. As it's going towards Penang. I haven't been able to find confirmatory reports yet, but there's people that live there, presumably, right? So if there's a plane flying under 10,000 feet, people might have seen it, although it's the middle of the night, so it might be hard to see.
Well, they would have heard it if it's flying that low. Well, they're next to an airport, so...
Yeah, exactly. You might just ignore it, right? You just assume, whatever, it's just an airplane. And then you have Kate T, which is our main witness, which after we found out the satellite time, I started digging into the witnesses. I find out there's a woman right there, right at the same time, sees the plane glowing orange.
Where was
the reason why it's glowing orange? So where you have your plane picture on the left in the Andaman Sea over here. So she's probably over to the west near this island over here. She's going to Phuket from India.
All right.
And she had an official sighting that she reported when she finally landed her boat, which she didn't understand what she was seeing, because she sees this glowing orange plane without navigation lights. She hears about MH370 and realizes, wow, I was in the right location on the right night. She looks at her automatic GPS, is able to confirm she's in the location. The glowing orange plane is coming from halogen gas, bromine, which is a chemical reaction happening from the halon fire extinguishing devices used to try to put the fire out. So they're battling this fire for over an hour. And all this chemical reactions happening where you're getting bromine, halogen, spreading throughout the plane, probably seeping out of the plane. She sees it like a mist kind of coming from out of the plane as well. And the reason why she can see it is this pitch black night. Right. And again, this is not by the cities, so you can see much better at night when you don't have all this light pollution, right?
Yeah.
And if you compare what she says she saw the plane look like, and this is not based on me talking to her, based on looking at her old blog posts, it looks just like a halogen lamp. And so this is where it's like, oh, wow, this is how we figured out, okay, wait, could this have been a lithium ion battery fire, right? And then we start to put those pieces together and go, okay, yes, there was all these lithium ion batteries in the plane. All these other witnesses saw the same stuff as well. It's not that these witnesses made stuff up. It's that they just saw what really happened.
But her blog post you just mentioned, so that was something she wrote after she saw the fire, and you found the blog post. You didn't go to her and ask her what she saw. You saw what she had written first, and then went and did you speak with her?
Yeah, I made contact with her, and I did my own interview with her as well to corroborate some of the events, see if her story would change or anything like that.
Okay.
Not only did her story not change, we learned a few new details. When I asked her what time, she wasn't really even tracking my case, even though I would send her some stuff. Right. And she said that the time was 1840 UTC. And she said she felt pressured by the experts to change her time to fit their stories. I was just like, whoa, like that's the exact time we think the videos are happening in the location where she's at. And then she also tells me, I asked her to like look at that thermal that we're looking at in the background on your video back there.
Right.
And I say, is this what the plane looked like? And she goes, well, it's not green. I just laughed because I realized she had not been following my case at all, because she didn't realize we're looking at a thermal image of an electro IR camera. Right. She's like, well, it was orange. And I'm like, well, what about the shape though? Oh yeah, the shape is the same. And I was showing her the shape of the one where it's like overlaid over the plane. And so this is too then where I'm like, okay, this is not a military plane. She was looking at a passenger plane. She was looking at MH370. Everybody agrees she was there at the right time. The fact that these experts have like dismissed her sighting is just beyond belief for me. Completely beyond belief.
Who has dismissed her? I'll be honest, I have not seen the
everybody, all of them. Jeff Wise. Jeff Wise was part of the independent group initially. He got kicked out because he went with the Russia theory, which is also I nothing against Jeff Wise, but the Russia theory is kind of nonsense, because if the plane went to Russia, it's going to go through like a dozen countries that have radars. You just can't hide it from all these countries. Otherwise, I might be on board with this theory, because, Florence Chang, everybody else who investigated, they realized that you can't not have a debris field for a 777 crashing in the ocean. That's just not possible. This plane's going to rip apart. There's going to be debris everywhere. You're going to see it from space as the debris, the bodies, the luggage, everything starts to spread out. We would have found this plane the next day. And we've confirmed that because we've seen where all the satellites are now. Their SBIRS system is literally mapping the whole planet with satellites, 24/7, persistent global monitoring. It's like, okay, you guys understand what those words mean? It means that you can't hide a 777 crash into the ocean.
And we probably have artificial intelligence that could, even if somebody wasn't sifting through the footage themselves, could find
artificial intelligence literally runs the satellites. It's called the Sentient System. It was declassified in 2012, and that's how they quote unquote operationalize the satellites. Now they're not going to speed them up, but they're going to angle them wherever they need to have them look to have the best intelligence. My guess is the only reason why we can have such high quality video that we have in the satellite video is because we have USA 229. There's a low Earth orbit satellite staring right down at it. The geostationary satellites are 40,000 kilometers away. Those are very far away. You're going to be looking straight down. You're not going to probably have the resolution where you can, see a dime on the ground for those satellites. The low Earth orbit ones are only 1,000 kilometers away. They're 40 times closer. So, and they've put even more up now recently. So in the last 9 years, they're really scanning everything. But they realize that you can't not have that. The problem is they start to dismiss all these witnesses because they believe this Immerstat pings. These Immerstat pings are released months later, which they should have been released the next day if they weren't afraid of it being like, if they knew they were legit, they would have released it the next day. There could have been people on boats somewhere needing help on the ocean, right? They don't release the radar data. They don't release the Immerstat pings. I look at the Immerstat data because I'm thinking, if this stuff's real, I want to understand the Immerstat pings. And this was before I thought that, a lot of this was the biggest conspiracy ever. I was believing the official narrative still. I was reaching out to these independent groups thinking that they would be interested in getting to the truth. But I've come to realize that I don't think any of them want to find the truth. And
that's weird. I agree.
It's very weird. I can't tell if they are compromised or if they are just, I'm just going to say it, incompetent. Because there's no way that you can dismiss all these witnesses. There's no way that anyone can look at the Immersat pings and not see the anomaly that I was able to find. As far as I can tell, I'm the first person to report this anomaly at, guess what, 1840 UTC. You look through the spreadsheets, it's dozens of rows of data, if not hundreds of rows of data. You get to 1840 UTC, it's just zeros. It's like I'm looking at this data, I'm like, guys, I'm in IT. If a spreadsheet has even one thing wrong with it, it fails an upload. It doesn't work correctly. It's just zeros going down. And then you get to the next one, the next 5 hours, 1941 UTC to 2315, I believe it is. It's 10 total rows of data for 5 hours. I'm just looking at, like, we just went through like 300 rows of data for an hour and a half. And now for the next 5 hours, it's 10 total rows. And this is where they're claiming this plane's flying through the South Indian Ocean. Doesn't make any sense at all. I confronted Victor about it in Twitter. Right. And he just starts screaming, it's normal to me. And, oh, you think aliens took the plane? And I'm just going, okay, this guy is just, he's got CNN brain, as I like to refer to it, where it's like, you know, you just, whatever the TV tells you must be reality. You can't explain. I'm just sitting there, can you explain why it's normal? Because it certainly doesn't look normal to me. And it seems to corroborate everything that we're seeing.
Does this help at all? Is this the...
yeah, this is the search area.
Okay.
Where they search, and I think they're searching underwater, I think, in a lot of those plots that you see on there as well. The official search searched with 42 planes and 39 boats from like 13 different countries.
Right.
Like, there's no way there was some cover up where like the debris field was hidden or anything like that. We would have seen it right away. Even after the South Indian Ocean narrative comes around, we still would have seen the debris field. This is like 5 days later on March 13th. They look along these arcs because that's where the satellite is. There's another satellite to the east that just never pings the plane. No one can explain why it doesn't. Again, I question Victor on this. He just says it's normal. He won't explain why. The previous flight pings back and forth between the two satellites. Why that's important? If we had two pings, we'd be able to identify where the plane is exactly. We wouldn't have to worry about this arc situation because we can triangulate its location. So they look at this arc. We search everywhere, above water, below water. There's no witnesses that see the plane in the South Indian Ocean. No debris field is an active shipping route. They find nothing down there. There is no black boxes are found. They look all along the 7th arc. They even find a couple pings that they knew were not pings from the black boxes because these black boxes send very specific signals on, like, I think it's 35 kilohertz. Right. Could have that incorrect. But the pings that they heard were not equivalent to that. So they knew that those were not the black boxes, but they search anyway because they're desperate. The SOSA system, same one that heard the Titan sub pop, that would have heard the plane hit the water.
Okay.
Nothing.
Yes.
No detections.
I heard you mention that. I can't remember which podcast I was listening to, but I heard you mention that. And the fact that, like you said, on the Titan sub, they let the cat out of the bag. And they strung us all along for 5 days because they knew they had heard the explosion of that sub, or the implosion rather. And then that was, I remember thinking at that time, wow, if they've got these microphones, they should be, and they're hearing stuff all the time, everywhere. And then hearing you connect that to this, those microphones have been around that long, right? That whole system's been around.
They gave away the game with that, definitely. That's when I heard that, I went, oh boy, we got them. Like, because they would have heard the plane, they would have found it right away. And I think no one has a hard time believing it's post 9/11 world. There's no way we're losing track of a 777. It's 2014. So. It's not the 90s anymore, right? We've got acoustic detectors all over the water. We've got satellites everywhere. Like, it's completely unbelievable that we wouldn't know. Even before I saw these videos, I went, the U.S. military has to know more about what happened to this plane than they're leading on. And I wasn't going down the conspiracy route with it, but now it's just the biggest conspiracy ever. Well, there's even two more.
You have to think about, well, okay, if they did hear like they didn't tell us they'd heard the Titan implosion, what if they had heard the explosion of or the impact of the 777 and just didn't tell anybody about it? I don't know what the motivation for that would be. But
problem is there's two other acoustic detectors that also didn't hear it. Western Australia has hydrophones, and the Diego Garcia military base hydrophone data was actually released. And there's no acoustic detections for a crash in the morning anywhere around the area. There's also two radar systems that would have seen it. Indonesia, if that plane is flying down the South Indian Ocean, Indonesia is going to see it on their radar. Don't see anything. Australia has the Joran system, the generally operational radar network. That I looked at the range of that. That's also going to catch it along the 7th arc. They don't see it either. And then people I already know that are listening that, you know, have got that same CNN brain are going, well, the ocean's just really big, Ashton. It could go anywhere. They have the plane literally running out of fuel. There's actually nowhere else for the plane to go. This plane's not going to Antarctica. It's not going anywhere else. This is the furthest it can possibly travel. We actually just searched everywhere the plane can go and found nothing. And just to reiterate this, the official search did not find one piece of the plane. Nothing. Not above water, not below water. There's nowhere else for them to look. If the plane had crashed in the ocean, the 4 redundant ELT beacons, transponders, would have activated, and we also would have heard it there as well. So it's just completely nonsensical to claim that this plane crashed in the South Indian Ocean. There's no evidence whatsoever of it.
I'd also read that one of the black box's batteries had actually expired the year before. I don't know if that's true or not. I read it on the interweb.
I doubt it, but I think the reality too. Yeah, the defense minister says that like he's not going to believe in one of the interviews that the battery would even end after 30 days. Like, I think that's even a little bit of misinformation. My guess is the battery will last longer than 30 days as well. And this is probably just them doing damage control, because there's no logical reason why you would not find the black box.
This was
we should have found the black boxes.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This was the largest search in history. Like, the idea that we wouldn't have found it, I did a bunch of research into like how they search for these black boxes. It's not too deep. They looked everywhere over there on the black boxes as well. Acoustic sounds travel better in water as well. It's just no way we couldn't find this plane down there. We even had passengers whose phones were ringing for 4 days after the event.
Okay.
19 family members, 19. If it was 1 or 2, I'd say, okay, there was something. 19 signed a statement begging them to look into the cell phone data, the government.
What does that
and they won't
tell
look
us?
into it.
What does that tell us? And you can call somebody whose phone, let's just say for the sake of argument, the plane did crash into the water. It's at the bottom of the ocean. Somebody's trying to call one of the cell phones. What would happen if that were the case?
Should just go straight to voicemail. I mean, if you're under about 1 foot of water, it's not going to get a signal, according to radio frequency experts that I've talked to.
Okay.
A phone is going to die in salt water in about 30 minutes or less. The cell phone towers only extend out a few miles off the coast. They definitely don't go to the South Indian Ocean. So people try to claim, oh, well, it's pinging the last tower that it touched or something like that. Doesn't make sense either. They were on an airplane. It's not like it was pinging towers actively. Certainly not for 4 days. And one family member actually proved it on national television that the phone was ringing as well. So
those cell phones
CNN,
were somewhere above water, in theory.
Presumably, somewhere in range of a cell phone tower, right? Supposedly there were also ghost calls that happened to some people as well, which I haven't reported on really officially, but I did see that, which is interesting.
With the ghost
so
call.
it kind of presents a theory of, okay, well, where were these people? They had to be somewhere on Earth, right? Somewhere within range of a cell phone tower. But really, conclusively, what I would like to state is that there's no chance this plane crashed in the South Indian Ocean. There's just no evidence of it.
All right.
And the debris that people will say as well, they found some debris. People love to drop that. I don't think a lot of people look at the CNN picture. And I'm just going to, rag on CNN even more. But if you look at the CNN picture of the debris, you'll find that the 3 confirmed pieces of the plane are far less, like I would argue less than 1% of the entire plane. We did not find a plane here. And if you look at those pieces, only 1 was matched with a serial number. The media, dishonestly, once again, doesn't tell you they did not use a unique serial number. This was not a situation where they knew that this matched the MH370.
All right.
They match it using a non-unique serial number, like a part number on this flaperon.
Right. And so this is a piece I found. This would probably be what most people find online if they search for, parts of MH370. And this is in the Guardian, January 2017. So they list all of this stuff, and they list the locations of where it was found, Tanzania, Madagascar, all up and through here. So we got the flaperon that you just mentioned, and it doesn't
have... that they don't tell you. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So one of the things that they rarely, if ever, tell you in these parts when they talk about the debris is some of the debris parts that were found have a unique honeycomb pattern of Boeing, and they have burn marks on them. So they don't like to tell about those pieces. They like to stick to the one. Yeah, I think that is one of them, actually. So this actually was one of the better ones. Yeah, this is the honeycomb one where you can see the scorch marks actually on that debris right there. Consistent with the fire scenario we're talking about. The tiny amount of debris that we found here is, again, consistent with a fire scenario where some pieces have fallen off the plane. And it's also consistent with this advanced technology that we've been talking about with quantum and macro unification, where we're talking about teleportation, but it's more complex than that. It's more of a situation of quantum entanglement, where we can do that on the macro scale. And now if you have a situation where this plane moves from one location on the Earth to another, then there's nothing wrong with the debris. In fact, I would argue that this scenario is more consistent with the debris and more importantly, lack of debris field than any other story to date by magnitudes.
So you think that this debris here is not necessarily from MH370, that this is, if it's not, what is it from?
No, I think that it is from MH370. That's the interesting part. And then I think that if it's not, and a lot of it has been thrown into question, I think it's important to bring up that GA Telesis, a company that was started by a military guy in his 30s, that is a multi-billion-dollar company that purchases planes, bought an exact replica of MH370 in October of 2013, scrapped decades too soon. And if you have an exact replica of the plane that you've purchased that 6 months before this happened, and again, remember that flap run is not matched with the unique serial number, you can't say whether or not that this actually came from MH370 or if it came from that other plane. It's very easy that someone could have just thrown it in the water. I think that Jeff Wise actually does a very detailed analysis trying to explain how a piece this large has barnacles on it consistent with, or how they're not consistent, and can't figure out how this piece would be floating in the water. It would have to be like just submerged under the water and flipping around for it to have the type of debris or barnacles on it. So, ultimately for me, it's not that big a deal because the tiny amounts of debris do not conclusively prove any type of crash into the ocean. And I think it's consistent with the theory that I put forth. I mean, if this plane got to, let's just say, Diego Garcia military base somehow, you rip off the flapper on, throw it in the water. Okay, well, there we go. Now, if you're trying to do a cover up, that's what you need to have happen, right? Because then you need the media to go, oh, we found a piece of debris, right? But then you forget that, the official search didn't find anything. The official search that was searching in real time, where we should have found a huge debris field, didn't find anything anywhere, right? All we found was 18 months later, some stuff washes up on the shore. I'm not going to vilify Blaine Gibson. My opinion of him from watching the Netflix documentary is that he's an honest person.
Right.
Now, is he being used and told to go find stuff here or there? I don't know, maybe. But I don't think he's malicious. I don't think he's planting debris or anything like that. I think that when Jeff Wise went at him that way, it was pretty disrespectful. I think he's just a guy who's, a patriot or expat, as they call them. It's a guy living overseas that was just trying to do the right thing. And I think that he did find some parts of MH370.
So if I remember correctly, he said that there have been threats on his life. Blaine Gibson. Probably.
Can you imagine? I mean, he's finding debris that has burn marks on it, and that's a scenario that they're trying to cover up. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that. I mean, that's also happened to families of the victims as well. So far, I haven't had any, but supposedly.
And I told you when we first talked, I was like, be careful, because, but you brought up a great point. The powers that be, government, whoever, they seem more intent on just destroying a person's reputation and their life more than, outright killing him and making him a martyr.
And the people that have been following me along have been seeing this attempts happen in real time, and that's part of the reason why I've been like 3 steps ahead of the game here, because that's exactly what I expected to have happen. Okay. So the way I get around that is being as honest and open as possible, as transparent as possible. I've even been streaming most of the work that I do on a nightly basis so that people can watch in real time as we're doing stuff. That's why I'm going on all these podcasts, so that people can watch and interact with me and see that I'm a straightforward person, that I'm an open book, that I can answer any question that people want to ask. And then you'll go online and people see all these personal attacks on me, right? And if anything, it actually seems to elevate us. They ban our subreddit, for narrative control. That elevates us further. People see right through that.
Why'd they ban it? What'd they say they were banning it for?
They didn't give me any official reason. They actually said they couldn't explain detailed why. Like, I didn't even get a warning. Just literally just banned. They said that it's like breaking the moderator code of conduct. On subreddit, you've got subreddits that literally just ban people for posting on other subreddits they don't like, that they consider to be disinformation. But
wow,
I can't ban people that are like trolling and like personally attacking me? Like, makes no sense at all. The only reason why I made the subreddit is the only subreddit dedicated to trying to research the case, quote unquote, isn't trying to research the case at all. It's literally just trying to cover it up and make it go away. Right. They ban anyone who goes against them. They ban anyone who won't claim that the videos are fake. Nobody on there has ever tried to solve the case except for me. No one. And this is a subreddit. The whole purpose is actually run. The moderators are all debunkers from this website Metabunk, which is run by like the biggest disinformation, misinformation person on the planet, Mick West. And so there's nobody there who's trying to solve it. They're all completely dishonest and just completely delusional as well. Like they're all people that, again, just believe whatever. It's exactly like fact checks, right?
I don't understand.
It's like,
oh, okay, we can't have the conversation.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, right? And they're so dishonest about it. Like this is how far they went. Not only did they ban me, but then people start to post my content. They ban my subreddit. They ban me from that subreddit. That's because like if I'm posting real stuff there and solving the case, you can't have that.
Right.
So then they start to post. They make a unique tag, which you have these flare tags for content, because people start posting my content there because I'm banned, and I had never requested anyone to post my content anywhere, but they start posting it because it's compelling. They tag it with potential scammer. This is how far they're willing to go with the disinformation. Potential scammer they post. So I actually had to send a cease and desist to Reddit. And I sent them a letter to the moderator say, if you don't take this down, I'm going to subpoena you guys and have to sue you guys personally, which they then claim I'm harassing them. No, man, when you put scammer on my content, that's you harassing me. So the same day they received the cease and desist on a Monday, they took the tag down, stopped using it. And they actually, the funny part is this subreddit, it gives random people that are in no way experts at all fake tags, fake flair that says they're subject matter experts, just to really deceive people into thinking these people's opinions mean something. They're just random nobodies on the internet that have no credibility whatsoever. And they'll give them subject matter expert tags. They only do that to the people who are trying to debunk the videos as well. It's just, so transparent.
Why would they want to diss you? I mean, at best, or at worst, one of the two. Let's just say you're a crackpot, that you are insane, that you're just tossing these theories. You're not accusing a person of being a murderer, a rapist, a pedophile. You're not doing any of that. You're saying, I think this is X, Y, and Z. Why is that so offensive to some of these people that you can't express your opinion? I don't understand that.
I've been trying to understand it myself. I think there was an ex-litigator who posted on one of my tweets last week that kind of explained that there's no reason to attack people like this. And he's worked in criminal prosecution, defense, etc. And he finds that when people act this way, it's because they have skin in the game, right? Is that the only reason why you would attack someone in that region is because you have some type of skin in the game. I think that for a lot of people, it's cognitive dissonance. They've decided the videos have to be fake. And if they are proven wrong, I mean, they're going to look really dumb, right? They're going to look like it's a big mark on them. They lose a lot of credibility. And so a lot of people then in that respect, they lash out personally, right? And for other people as well, like if you look at these videos and we realize the implications here of the technology of covering up MH370,
right?
A lot of people have a lot to lose, like a lot to lose. And I would even reverse it. Why do you have people like Mick West trying to debunk these videos with corny, two-dimensional, low-quality 90s video game graphics? There's no 90s video game graphics in these videos. That's an objective statement, not an opinion.
All right.
And he's trying to debunk that. Go ahead.
I've watched a couple of his, and I had heard of him prior to talking with you about all this. And I watched him debunk one of the, it was a UFO sighting, and the method that he used to debunk it made sense to me. He used flight tracker, and he showed where this other flight was going. It's like, oh, okay, I can see where whoever took the cell phone picture out the window of Jet A is looking at another plane down here because I can see him on flight tracker. Okay, that makes sense. So to me, the first time I saw him, I was like, all right, this guy seems legit, but he is trying and whenever I hear somebody say, well, that, the wormhole effect has been debunked. He was the one who, quote unquote, debunked it, but explain, it's not really debunked, right? No. And somebody did a great rebunk of it the other day, showing that this is a very common dispersal pattern that shows up in nature all the time. What had happened is that he found an asset, most likely used a computer program, may even been given to him by the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, because that's who produced the asset. Right. And then just resizes it, reshapes it, gets it to, try to match around the edges, which it still doesn't match on just one frame. On one frame, they try to get it. It's similar because all dispersion patterns are similar, but the middle part's not even close to the same. It's not even the right color. It's not even the right kind of event. It's an exothermic event, where our event is a cold endothermic event.
Exothermic event is a release of energy. Endothermic event is an absorption of energy. But this is the kind of lazy debunks that resonates with people that can't think critically. And I'm not trying to attack you personally on this. I think that, but this is how McWest is able to trick people that don't dig in themselves. Is a lot of prosaic types of debunks. Oh, this looks like this. This must be that, right? But that's not how it works, and that's not how visual effects work either. It would have to be a perfect match. This would be a situation where you need it to match. Yeah.
There's the essential. I was able to pause it. I got lucky on about the fourth time. I mean, that's essentially the wormhole. And I'll put in. I'll probably when this airs officially, I'll lay over some video over the top of this so people know exactly. But I'm giving people credit for having at least watched some of the other interviews, because this is the wormhole that they said was created using some sort of video game from the 90s, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And
the problem is that this is an original work, right? So if we're doing this, there's no one was able to copy this. It's not like if I'm looking at the Mona Lisa and I need to change something to make it look like the Mona Lisa and put it in there. Somebody would have had to just been modifying this at random and then have it look exactly like this video game effect, or be modifying the video game effect and then have to happen to perfectly get it to line up with what we see here, which makes no sense at all. If you're inputting an asset into a video that's real, you're just going to put the whole asset in there. You're not going to modify it. That's a lot of work. Why would you do any of that? Right. And this is just one frame, and we weren't even doing the comparison there, but the other frames aren't even similar. They're not even remotely close either. So it's a matter of trying to deceive people through deceptive uses of social contagion and disinformation. And then people don't even know that it goes back to McWest. A lot of people I talk to is, oh, isn't that a video game effect? And I go, oh, so you've been listening to McWest? They're like, oh, I don't know where it even came from, right? Because that's how social contagion spreads.
Even Ron
they used a
so.
sock puppet.
He asked the same thing this morning. He said, well, hadn't that been debunked? I said, tell me why you think it's been debunked and who. He says, I don't know. I just heard it. I went, that's what I think most people say.
That's how social contagion works, and they know it, right? So they abuse it. And so what they did was they used a sock puppet account called ICY Slide, which literally stands for Intelligence Community Forum Slide, which is a mechanism of this is the literal mechanism that they actually used to promote fake content. And then you get everyone to believe it. It's very easy on Reddit. You just bot upvoted it up. You have fake comments in there that say, oh, thank God this is debunked. And you bot vote those up as well. Give it a bunch of awards. Nobody does any intelligent thinking. And that's how it spreads like wildfire. The only person that has claimed to found this asset is McWest on the same day that this ICY Slide account posted. He's the only person to this date that found it from some obscure 3DO video game. And this is just days after he's been on record multiple times saying he would not spend any time trying to debunk the videos. The guy is completely dishonest. And the big issue with it is this. If he wants to go and lie about UAP videos, which he's also lied about the declassified DoD Navy videos and tried to debunk those, which is just weird, that's fine. I don't care. When you are trying to debunk videos of the plane going missing where 39 people were on board, their families got no answers, a pilot was vilified, now you're broaching on seditious conspiracy. Now you're at a point where you are facing potential criminal charges for hiding what happened to this plane. And if these videos end up being real, because of the damage that he has caused, the misinformation he's caused, exactly the example that you just gave, where people know about his debunk without even knowing it, I believe that he should be charged with seditious conspiracy, like other people have, which I won't reference right now, but you guys probably know who I'm talking about, and I think, should spend decades in prison over it. Because this is not a joke. This is not a situation where, I'm dunking on the UFO people. This is a situation where an entire plane went missing and we got no answers.
Exactly. All right. So let me get to the, and I don't know how much time you have, and I apologize.
Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay, good. I want to ask you a couple more questions about the debris, because you said something. You said the debris that's been found, you think it could be from MH370. Yeah. That would mean that the plane is somewhere at the moment, right? Or that it was at some point. I mean, yeah.
And right before we go into that, just because I want to make sure I don't forget to say this, is that this is how serious we are about these videos being real. We now have a $145,000 bounty, $145,000 for anyone who can find the supposed hoaxer and produce the source files. If somebody produced these, They would have a computer full of stuff. They would have taken them months to produce this. And if someone claims they could do it faster in 2014 technology, give us those source files. Let us show us that work. This has been going viral for weeks now. We've got hundreds of millions of views on it. There's no way in heck that this person would be able to stay quiet. If they want to collect $145,000, all they have to do is come out, bring those source files they use to generate this, and they can collect that money. This is coming from Kim.com, the Investigate Earth podcast, and I vetted an individual who's a wealthy follower who has run for office, and they've also put up another $25,000. So we have $145,000 total. The only way to debunk these videos is to find that person and bring that on. Otherwise, they are not debunked as a statement of fact.
2014, we looked it up this morning. The iWatch came out in 2014, or the Apple Watch. The iPhone was at 6. Now we're at what, 15?
Yeah.
It was, you forget how long ago 2014 is. And as a video editor myself, software isn't what it is now, or wasn't what it is now. So yeah, you would have.
Yeah, it would have taken supposedly weeks just to render this, because you need to render a 3D rendered environment to get both angles. And this is why having two videos is so important from two different angles. It's also why you wouldn't use a low quality 2D effect. What they also don't state is when they do that comparison, they end up using the 2015 remastered version of that effect and not the old 90s version, which if you were to look at a 90s version of a video game, you're going to know how pixelated it is. And you're going to realize right away there's no chance that can be in our videos that we have here. But now going to the debris real quick, and I just want to touch on the science part. If people want to understand the science about this, watch my Hard Truths podcast. You can see the name of it at the bottom of the screen here. I started this podcast for the sole reason of understanding the science behind this. Because if the videos are real, then we can explain everything, including the science. And this is why I've gone from in the very early days thinking this must be very advanced non-human intelligence technology that's thousands of years more advanced, to now realizing that no, this is actually our technology, and it's maybe 50 or 100 years more advanced, but it's just in black project programs that the military is keeping hidden from us because of the huge implications of it. And what we're dealing with here is a form of essentially quantum entanglement from a macro level. Just yesterday on the Dave Rossi Hard Truths podcast, he spoke freely with us. He's a defense contractor. He works in advanced propulsion like this. Essentially says he thinks there might be a fourth orb. And what's happening is the fourth orb is entangled to the other three. So that when this plane disappears, it is essentially instantly transported to where the fourth orb is. And it doesn't have to be in the direction of travel of what the plane is heading in either. We are dealing with technology that will reshape the world. And this explains why it has to be covered up. I mean, I even have qualms about it, about the idea of should this even be released publicly. The reason why I have proceeded forward is I think that these videos are 9 years old. Russia, China's intelligence would have figured out that they're real if we were able to figure out they're real just using a Twitter account and Google. And they've probably already reverse engineered the technology themselves, right? And if that's the case, then I'm not as worried about it getting out there. I am a patriot. I do want our country to be protected. But you know, we lied about MH370, and that deserves the truth, right? So if that means, go ahead.
I used to believe that there were things that we, the people, shouldn't know. I don't necessarily think that way anymore, because the people in power have misused our trust and have abused us. And to me, they've lost the right to be able to keep things secret. You know, but like you said, if the Russians have already figured this sort of thing out, this would also account for the $1 trillion or however many gazillion dollars the Pentagon can't account for. The fact that they can't, pass an audit where, this is the $700 hammer from the 80s at NASA.
You got it.
This is all of that stuff.
You got it.
And the fourth, or I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fourth orb. So we have 3, and then there would be a fourth one interdimensionally
somewhere else. No, somewhere else on the Earth, right? And you've got them entangled. And so the way Dave Rossi explained it is like, think of like jiggling Jello, where Jello's stationary, but then you hit it and then it's going to jiggle, and then all of a sudden this plane is just going to go pop. You're going to see that effect. What is actually, it's being called, there you go. You're going to see this happen. And how this is being explained is macroscopic phase conjugation. The phase of the plane is changing. And this is why we don't see the clouds blow away. This is why we don't see the clouds get sucked in. It's not a black hole. It's not an explosion. the plane is undergoing a phase state change, macroscopic quantum coherence. The electrons from this event that's happening here, he thinks that when it's circling around it is essentially preparing the space-time around it. When they converge at the very last second, that's what causes the pop. That's what causes the whole thing to instantly have this reaction where now it undergoes this macroscopic phase conjugation where the electrons begin to cohere. They self-organize. So the electrons of the plane itself are, think of it like a cloud around the plane. They're having this cloud cohere, and now it's able to have the whole plane act as though it was microscopic or quantum object, like an atom. A lot of people reference the movie Contact, which is very similar, where they build this device that's circling around the plane. Supposedly that's very accurate to what we think is actually happening here from a scientific perspective. Not quite like that, but that these orbs are actually acting as electrons around the plane. And then when they converge, there's a dynamic here happening where it's a 120-degree sinusoidal 0-point pattern, meaning it's a perfect equilateral triangle. And I guess it's very similar to electrical engineering. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not an engineer or a physicist, but it's got me excited to try to learn about it. I think that if people want to know how this stuff works, get into electrical engineering. That's what you want to be looking at.
And when you said, I was with you when you said triangle. That's because looking at all the other words, they're large words.
Perfect equilateral triangle.
But yes, that's the other thing that struck me is they are truly just, I mean, perfectly. It's pretty damned amazing. So what the theory is here is that they took this plane somewhere else, let's say on Earth, for the sake of argument. Why?
Yeah, so that's, I think, the thing that everybody wants to know. So right away, I have to say, I can only prove what I can prove. And really, that gets to the part where we see in the videos. And then, beyond that, it's going to be speculative. So if there is a fire on board this plane, then the motivation becomes about either saving the passengers or somehow preventing them from getting to China. Basically, we want this intellectual property. They are the 20 Freescale semiconductor scientists on board. That's too many people for one plane. These people were important people who were engineers on there. They were not the CXOs, although those people are not the most important part of any company. Anyone who's worked in the companies know that the people at the top are not the people that make everything happen, right? They were going to China supposedly to upgrade power plants or factories there. They are connected to I'm going to say this wrong, but microchips essentially that were produced for aerospace and defense.
Those tiny
They
ones.
are also connected to room temperature superconductive chips that is reported in a 2005 National Security Agency report that talks about the commercial use or commercial emergence of superconductive chips, room temperature ones. Freescale Semiconductors is listed 9 times in there, talked about their microchips and their advancements.
Is that cold fusion when you say room temperature conductivity? Is that the same
thing?
It
is very similar to that. And if you watch Bob Grenier interview, my Hard Truths podcast #2, he goes into cold fusion. And one of the arguments he makes is that cold fusion doesn't require 0 temperatures. It can happen at different temperatures. And so his podcast was very interesting, and we've been learning a lot about the science and the applications related to how this can all happen. The main applications that we've learned from this is not just teleportation, like we see this quantum teleportation that we're seeing. You can have annihilation. So this could be a perfect defense weapon as well, where you can annihilate a nuke or a missile that's coming at you. And make it just disappear, turn into something else essentially, and make it useless, render it completely inert. It can also get fusion power. We think that the orbs here, we're looking at the barrier there is a field around a smaller mass. It's the non-radiating barrier. So what we're seeing there is the part where space-time is interacting with this field that these orbs are creating that's pulling them out of space-time entirely, which allows them to have 0 mass. That would be very similar to exactly what they do to the plane. Because once you get to 0 mass, now you can ignore gravity. Now you can achieve the speed of light. Whereas if you have mass, then the more you speed up, the more energy it takes to get closer to the speed of light. But with 0 mass now, one thing we learned is it takes very little energy to approach the speed of light. So you can basically just give it a small push, and now it can move wherever you need it to go. And fusion power, then you can create a sun inside one of those fields. And now you have like a small sun, a portable fusion power generator. You can also create free energy. Free energy can happen. The example that Dave Rossi gives is the Pac-Man example, is that most of our power generation that we have, or air conditioning and heating systems, are closed systems, closed mouth Pac-Man. If you open the mouth of Pac-Man, now you have an open system, and you can absorb the energy from the vacuum of space-time itself. And you can have interactions that produce more energy that goes in. You can also, of course, have force fields and cloaking, which I think is probably some of the least controversial aspects of this type of technology. People have already seen these like cloaking fields that people have made with metamaterials, things like that.
And the screen, I've seen that one where
where you like looks like you're looking through the person, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Faster than light communication. That's actually probably even the least controversial, because quantum teleportation has already been proven to be real, which is the ability to transmit information over large distances faster than the speed of light.
Right.
And that's essentially the same thing of what we're doing here to the plane at the macro level. And then the last thing I think is doomsday weapons. And this is the thing that I get most worried about when disclosing these videos. Is at first I thought we were just getting the truth of MH370. But once we start to dig into the science, you realize, okay, I looked at Salvatore Pais' paper. He was hard truths #1 for high frequency gravitational wave generators. And when you get to the last part of his paper, which currently has, I think, 700,000 views on my Twitter, and then I posted it somewhere else that has like another million, you'll see that one of the last applications he states is to be able to destroy an asteroid. And I think he's being coy there, because if you think about it, if you just scale that up, now you're going from destroying an asteroid to destroying a planet. And then when I asked Bob Greenier about it, he said, no, we're not talking about just destroying planets. We're talking about destroying the whole sun. And so we are talking about technology that it's not just nukes, because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, we can already destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we can destroy cities. We might even be able to destroy small countries. We're talking about giving an individual the capability to destroy the whole planet. That's what I think this all comes down to. That's why it's national defense, national security, is that the government doesn't want to allow terrorists, an individual terrorist or supervillain, however you want to think of it, to create a doomsday weapon that could destroy us all. It might even be the answer to the Fermi paradox.
Sorry, what is the Fermi paradox? Because I meant to look that up, and I've heard of it before, but I'm going to admit ignorance.
So the big question is, if we have advanced civilization, if life is everywhere, which I think it probably is, then we should be able to look up in the sky and we should be able to see it everywhere, right? We should see other planets and stuff, even nearby potentially, that have civilizations on them. So the question is, why have we not detected all these other civilizations? One answer could be that we have, and it's just been declassified. I think that the answer to me logically comes down to the fact that any sufficiently technologically advanced civilization will destroy itself. Or at least many will. Ones that cannot get to a point where we can find world peace, if you want to call it that. And maybe even then not, right? If you give an individual the capability to destroy the whole planet, how long are we really going to last, right? That's, to me, the answer to the Fermi paradox, is that many civilizations will simply destroy themselves. And it won't take us combined to be able to do it. It'll just take one bad actor to be able to pull it off. And that's what I think this technology can represent. And that's why some podcasters that I've talked to over the phone and stuff, and when I get dig into that part, they get uncomfortable with it, right? They go, okay, well, if that's the case, I want to keep it secret, right? Because I don't want to be responsible for the end of the world. That's like the last thing I want to be responsible for.
Well, the beauty of it is, if you are, no one will know, because it'll be the end of the world.
Yeah, there you go.
But it is. I see what you're saying, and so I want to make sure I understand one thing. So the plane would have been saved with this technology, because there was somebody or something on this plane, these people, that were working on a technology that's important to save. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, I mean, the room temperature superconductivity seems to be like the key to all of this.
Okay.
And you can achieve it without metamaterials, I've been told. Both Salvatore Pais and Dave Rossi both believe that it can be done through using the right shapes, toroids, which is like a donut, and passing an electrical current. That you can achieve room temperature superconductivity, high temperature superconductivity is the way they like to phrase it, without metamaterials like LK99.
That was a fascinating one too. I looked up LK99. There's so many.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
So many.
I've got videos of literally rocks floating over magnets and on the side of magnets as well, which that should be pretty eye-opening to people. That even if it's not as what it claims to be, like we are on the verge of this room temperature superconductivity. So room temperature superconductivity itself will change everything about the planet. And then you can create these correct shapes that will allow the energy to be kind of trapped to a point. And that's what can enable a lot of this that we're seeing here. The orbs floating, it can enable the effects that we're seeing here as well. So from the scientific perspective, I'm very confident that even if people still ignore this, time will vindicate all of these people, all of the science. They'll vindicate the videos as well, I believe.
So where do these people, do you think, ever show back up again?
Yeah, so the motive too, I think a lot of people, that's like highly contested. This is why, again, I say it's just speculative, right? Sure. This could also be a test of some sort. Like, let's just say there's the plane's doomed. The thing I don't think is that this is not wiping the plane out, because if you need that, you just let the plane crash in the ocean. These people are all going to drown, most likely all going to die. You don't need to do anything. Then you don't need to come up with a cover story either, right?
Right.
So, but there's some people say, well, the plane's doomed. Like maybe it's a test and they're testing it out. Sure. You know, I don't care what people want to believe with regards to what the situation is or whatever, because it's pretty hard to understand. We need the government to tell us. I'm stacking the evidence so highly that it leaves very narrow room for the narratives that, okay, there's only a small number of narratives that will stack up with the evidence.
Makes sense.
Now, let's say this plane goes somewhere. Let's say it goes to Diego Garcia military base. They hide the people underground in the CIA black site that they have there, the ones that survived at least. I mean, this could be a pretty dark situation. Like, I don't think everybody would have survived to the point that we're seeing here, because the plane's depressurized, toxic smoke potentially billowing out throughout the plane.
Sure.
The gas masks, or the masks on the plane, only last like 15, 20 minutes. And then this plane's flying for an hour and 20 minutes. And then you also have to survive this macroscopic phase conjugation, where I think it's possible, according to science, like there are wormhole papers, which isn't quite the same, but similar concept, that you can create this double-sided electromagnetic field that will allow the people on the inside for their time to appear to pass normally, even though this plane's going to teleport. That's going to cause a time dilation effect. So they might be unaffected, the people inside the plane. And I think that has to be the case, because we didn't find a plane crash anywhere. Like, we would have found it over somewhere else, right? Like in the Atlantic Ocean or something like that, if it wasn't successful. So I think at least some of them would have had to survive. And then the question is, okay, let's just speak hypothetically again. Maybe some of them live out their days on Diego Garcia. They're never allowed to leave. No commercial flights can ever go there. Give you a new identity, maybe pay you off, live on this beautiful resort island for the rest of your life. Some of them would have been potentially returned. Most of them are Chinese nationals. So China, we've been talking about some of the spy craft with China. China hacked Malaysia the next day on March 9th and stole their classified information and the minutes of their emergency meetings. Which is like, why are you doing that unless you know something is off about the situation, right? So they had us over the barrel after this. And I have to find the sources on this. I might do another piece now that I've been finding all this information about China and the hacking and these satellite images that China released that look like 3 orbs. Because I think that they might have known. And they were able to say, hey, you give our people back, or, you know, you do this. Otherwise, we're just going to tell the world that you're, you know, implicated in this. And they might not have direct proof, right? Like the same situation I'm dealing with, like who's going to believe them, right?
Right.
So that's what hold them back. But if you give those people back, those people are never going to be able to talk to the news, right? China is just going to keep them under thumb easily.
Well, yeah, you'd never know. That's the thing about China. You never know if anybody got returned or didn't get returned or what they went through.
And then Obama visits the Malaysian prime minister in April, which hadn't been done in 50 years, which is interesting. The White House was calling every day. There's only one American passenger, Philip Wood, on the plane. If he was captured, then he would probably go to witness protection, I imagine, and get a new identity, which would make sense for him because he just had a girlfriend. It's not like he had a family or anything like that, right? I mean, he has his brothers who, if they're listening, I would say, get in touch with me because I want you to win your court case. But I think that they would make him, sign an agreement, and all these people potentially would sign NDAs so that they can never speak as well. And I think this is corroborated by as well. Somebody spoke to, I believe it was the wife of one of the passengers on board the plane, and she was dating. And they said, this person sent me an email and said that they had matched this person, this woman on a date match site. And in the middle of their conversation, he thought they were hitting it off. She just says, people are listening, I have to go, goodbye. And they never speak again. And this was right after she reveals that like her husband was, her widowed husband or whatever was on board the plane.
Wow.
Which is very odd because it shows that there might have been surveillance on some of the family members as well. Now, the reason why I'll play devil's advocate against my own position is that I've been told from reliable sources, Florence Chang, who has been in contact with some of the families, that several of them have moved on, remarried, and things like that,
Sure.
which would indicate that they hadn't been reunited with their loved ones, right? So, again, hard to say with respect to the families. I like to think and hope that they survive, but I'm an optimist. And I want to send my condolences out to the families because we're doing this ultimately for them and for the pilot who was falsely vilified, for the witnesses who were dishonestly discredited, and then for the leaker who I think went to prison over this.
And yeah, and I'll tell everybody where to, because I was listening to it was on the podcast last night with Dave Rossi about the identity of the possible leaker. So I'll send people to that. How often do you think this information will change / update? In other words, if we talked again in 2 weeks, would there be new information? What do you think?
I keep thinking we're hitting the bottom of the barrel, and then we just keep finding more stuff.
All
like
right.
We find out the Chinese hack, which I'm just like, I like vaguely remember it, but you go back into 9 years and you're like, man, all this stuff was coming out, but it didn't really make sense at the time, right? It just didn't add up. And now you look at it and you go, okay, yeah, wow, this actually makes a lot of sense. Like the Malaysian Minister of Defense acting sketchy in all these press conferences and his interviews. It's not just incompetence, it's just malicious cover-up, right? And so I don't know if we're ever going to hit the bottom of the barrel, honestly, on this. I think we are close. I think the bigger reason why it's slowing down is that I'm doing 1 to 2 podcasts every single day now with people. That's how much this has spread. It's been going viral. I was on Coast to Coast AM. I'm going to be on Sam Tripoli's podcast pretty soon as well. I will also say I've started to make powerful contacts with people.
Imagine.
You know, I did send a letter to the Congress, you know, and that's over 6 million views. Which, I mean, that's the type of numbers that like huge people on Twitter are get. So,
and you have a petition
I don't know when
on
we're getting to the bottom there.
change.org, right?
Yeah, we even put a petition on change.org, which maybe I should retweet that back out again.
Because I found
that petition
yesterday.
is basically listening to Congress.
Okay.
And it's funny because you read that letter now and it says like I think like 8,000 or 9,000 followers. I have 57,000 followers now, and I've never been on TV. So the reason why those people are following is that it's been a grassroots movement, and they believe that the strength of the evidence is just that strong, right? People that are pushing hoaxes and fake stuff never get this kind of following, never get this kind of grassroots attention. I've never been on any mainstream media channels. This is all just coming from the podcasts and word of mouth that's been going out there.
Well, we're happy to help in any way we can. I mean, this whole thing fascinates me, and I'm with you. I mean, the fact that these families, it's been 10 years without, with nothing. And it's got to be torture for a lot of these folks. So, I hope that you are able to get to the bottom of the barrel at some point. And I can't help but think that this, along with all the stuff that's happening in Congress, theoretically the UAPs and the disclosure and all of that maybe we're on the verge of something. I don't know. You feel like we might?
Yeah,
be?
I'd like to speak on that politically as well, because we'll never, this is my opinion, we are never going to get disclosure from the government. It is going to be stonewalled. I think that the people that think it's coming next week, it's coming in 2027, whatever, you're just lying to yourselves. They are never going to admit to this. They are going to stonewall as long as possible. I think they just tried to kill that bill. I think it might be effectively dead already at this point, or at least gutted to the point where there's nothing left in it. Anyone who thinks that this is distracting from anything, exactly the opposite. This is potentially the last hope that anyone in our generation, anyone who's living on this earth right now, might have for true disclosure. Because at this point, these videos are from 2014. Everything else after this point, people are going to say that AI made it or whatever situation like that.
Right.
The only way, in my opinion, true disclosure happens is from the people, from something just like this, where somebody had to go to prison, risk their military career, get this leaked out to us, and then we had to disclose it to the world. So the way that we get that done is we make it self-evident. We spread this information far and wide to the point where everybody knows the U.S. government lied about this. We force a reaction. We force them to make a statement about it. We have the evidence stacked up. If their statement doesn't make any sense, we'll be able to call them out on it. So that's my opinion when it comes to the UAP stuff. And I want to also just reiterate that I am not part of the UFO community. I have separated myself from that entirely. I think that there's so much going on there, the warring factions and stuff between them. I want nothing to do with it whatsoever. I just want to reveal the conspiracy of what's going on here and get the truth for the families. And again, I don't think these are aliens or UFOs. I mean, technically they're UFOs, they're unidentified flying objects.
Right.
I think this is Lockheed Martin technology. Or pick your other favorite third-party multi-billion-dollar company that works directly with the DoD. Pick which one you like the most. Northrop Grumman, Boeing, maybe even Bigelow Aerospace, probably a few others that I'm not naming out there. There's a reason why these companies are getting huge multi-billion-dollar contracts with the defense, and they don't produce any civilian commercial products, right? It's because you can hide this information there. It's not available to FOIAs. And, you can have them still sign NDAs so that nobody there can speak about it. It's the perfect way to hide this type of stuff. Like you said, this is why they are not passing any of these audits on this stuff, right? Like $10,000 toilet seat, quoting Independence Day.
Totally,
the money's
sense.
Going somewhere, guys. You think it's going to let's call it superconductive harmonic orbs. That's my favorite term for these things. So personally, I don't have any problem believing what we're seeing on here, but I've been the one who's kind of been digging into the evidence the most. So my intention is to try to make sure that evidence is out there for everybody. And if anything were to happen to me, that other people will pick up the reins. I feel very confident that they will. Follow the investigation at JustXAshton, basically across all social media platforms, Twitter, or known as X Corp right now, YouTube as well. I'm streaming every night on there. I'm posting shorts as well. And occasionally on Instagram, I'm starting that up as well because I know that type of stuff appeals to the younger generation. Okay. If you want to get me on your podcast or whatever, the simplest way is to ping me on Twitter, try to get my attention that way, and then I can DM you and we can work something out. This movement is only growing. It is not going to be stopped. I need debunkers, and it won't stop until somebody collects the $145,000 bounty that will prove the hoaxer, bring the hoaxer forward, and show us the source materials dating back to 2014 where they supposedly made these videos. I don't think it will ever happen, but I wish people the best of luck.
The First Amendment.
It is their duty to throw off such governments and to provide new guards for their future security.
Lives here. Watch and listen at thedailymojo.com.